We're going to make an artwork inspired by Claude Monet and his paintings of water lilies. The first thing we're going to do is paint the water. We're going to use watercolor paints. You have lots of different colors to choose from, but you need to pick some colors that are similar to each other and that you might see in the water and in reflections that you see in the water. I'm going to choose a purple, blue, and a greenish color. You can look at the color wheel to see which colors are next to each other on the color wheel so that they'll look good together. When colors are next to each other on the color wheel, it's called analogous. Right now I'm showing you one way that you can paint your water. I'm using my paintbrush to paint short little brush strokes going horizontally on my paper. If you want your painting to be a tall painting in portrait style, you can turn your paper going vertical, but you still want to make your brush strokes going horizontal to look like the water. I'm going to speed this up a little bit so that you guys can see what it looks like in the end. As you can see, I have white spaces in between my brush strokes, and that's okay. I'm filling in with the 3 different colors I have picked out, the purples, the blues, and the greens, until most of my paper is filled in. If your colors are starting to bleed together where your brush strokes are touching, that is perfectly fine. It will look more like an Impressionist artwork with the visible brush strokes and the colors blending together. The second way that you can make your water is by doing a wet on wet technique. For this technique, you use plain water and you paint a section of your paper. Once that area is completely wet with water, use one color in your watercolor palette and get it nice and wet with your paintbrush. Then you make little dots of paint on the watered part of your paper. The color will bleed into the water, and dots of other colors will bleed into each other as well, making a really neat effect. If any of the spots aren't wet enough, you can add some water. After you do one section, get water on your paintbrush and paint a new section of your paper. Then add the dots of color until your whole paper is completely filled. If paint that you've already painted on your paper bleeds into the water, that's perfectly fine. Make sure not to use too much water because you are going to have to carry this to the drying rack, and you also don't want your painting to fall apart. While our paintings dry, we are going to draw some water lilies. There's a how to draw water lilies paper that can help you, and a paper that has 3 sections for you to draw your water lilies on. You're going to have one section for a big water lily for the foreground, one for a medium-sized water lily for the middle ground, and one for the small water lily that's going to be in your background. Start with making a U shape, and then kind of a curved zigzag line connecting the U on the top. In between those zigzags, you can add some more curved points for the petals that would be on the other side of the flower. If you want to, you can add a lily pad underneath your flowers, and you can do just a full oval or an oval with a little triangle piece taken out of it. When you draw your flowers, make sure you're taking up the whole space so that you end up having one large flower, one medium-sized flower, and one small flower. We're going to use oil pastels to color in our flowers and lily pads. Again, we want to use colors that are close to each other on the color wheel so that they look nice and they blend together well. You can look at the color wheel to help you find which colors are next to each other. For this first flower, I chose purple and pink. Whichever color that is the darkest color that you chose, start with that one for the bottom of your flower. So I'm coloring with lines going up and down just like they would follow the shape of the flower for the bottom of the flower with the purple. And then I'm going in on the top part and overlapping my pink with my purple so that it blends together. And then I'm extending the pink color all the way to the tops of the flower petals. You can go back and forth with your two colors, overlapping them to help blend them together to make a smooth transition for your colors. You can even use white to help blend the colors together, and I used white on one side of my flower to make it look like the light from the sun was shining on that side of the flower, and I used white at the top also. To color our lily pads, we can blend different colors together also. Use one color green that you like the best and lightly color in your whole lily pad. If you have white spaces showing, it's okay. Your second color of green you can use on top, and this time we can make little circles on top of your first color. Make little circles going around and around all over the entire lily pad. You can do this with your white oil pastel too if you'd like. These little circles are going to make it look like it has a different texture than the flower. I'm going to speed this up while I color the rest of my flowers and lily pads. I'm going to choose different colors for each one of my flowers. You can do that if you want, or you can make them all the same colors. It's completely up to you as the artist. If you choose different colors, just make sure that each flower has two colors that are close to each other on the color wheel so that they blend together nicely. Once all of your flowers are done, we're going to cut each one of them out and arrange them onto our paper that we painted for our water. When we arrange our flowers, we want to put them in the right order to make it look real. Our biggest flower goes in the foreground, which is closest to the bottom of our paper. Our medium-sized flower goes in the middle, which is called the middle ground. And our smallest flower goes in the background, which is higher up on our paper, because things look smaller the farther away they go. If you want to spread your flowers out to fill up the whole paper, you can, or you can place them all closer to the bottom of the paper, just in the right order, so that you have room to make a bridge if you'd like. Since these are really thick, we're going to use liquid glue to glue them down. Remember not to use too much glue. We don't want to make a big mess. When you put them on your paper, you also might have to hold them down for a while with both hands, maybe count to 10. I decided to add a bridge to my artwork, so I'm using a pencil to draw a very light arched line going over my flowers from one side of the paper to the other. I drew a second arched line above it for the top of the bridge. With a brown oil pastel, I'm coloring over those pencil lines really nice and dark. To connect the top of your bridge to the bottom of the bridge, draw vertical lines with your brown oil pastel. Make sure to go over them just as dark as you did your two arches. I also went back over the bottom part of my bridge to make the arch a little darker, just because I know that bridges are thicker on the bottom where you walk on. If you choose not to make a bridge, that's perfectly fine. In the end, either way, you'll have a really nice artwork inspired by the Impressionist artist Claude Monet.